What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Sector for Nerds. I'm Ryan Brower, and right now we're going to talk about what I think is the best episode that Star Wars has ever done for the Disney Plus era. But real quick, you guys, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If this is your first time watching, I like to do a lot of reaction videos to fan-made Star Wars content, whether that's fan films or tribute videos, and I also like to do a lot of discussions on the latest episodes that appear on Disney Plus, such as what we're doing here today. So make sure you guys subscribe if you haven't before. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps to support my channel. Okay, you guys, what the fuck was this episode? This freaking ruled. Guys, so much happened in this episode. So many surprises. So first of all, if you haven't seen the episode and you don't want to get spoiled, then get the heck out of here and come back later, because we're going to talk about it all, you guys. Like, I could talk for hours about how freaking good this episode was. Once again, it had absolutely nothing to do with Boba Fett, but as an overall story and the amount of things that happened in it, by far the best episode that they've done for the Disney Plus era. It was insane, and I want to start talking about it right now. It even started, you guys, with this opening that I didn't even see coming. So we see the Pykes on Tatooine, and the crate of credits that they're carrying is like that ice cream container thing that everybody talks about from Empire Strikes Back. But then we end up seeing Cobb Vanth, who I was not expecting, and trust me, that ended up being like on the least of my things that I was surprised about on the totem pole when all the other surprises came around. But we see Cobb Vanth. He's acting like the police and being like, hey, you guys can't move your spice around here. And then they kind of do like the old Western stare off, and then he, pulls out his gun and shoots them all. There were 4 of them there. He shoots 3 of them. He lets the other one get away, and he's like, you go tell your bosses, you guys ain't getting through here, all right? That's not happening. Admittedly, it was good to see Cobb Vanth back. I was kind of curious if he was going to show up in the show, because considering he had Boba Fett's armor for a little bit, like maybe we would have seen him in one of the flashback scenes, but no, we saw him here, which was really cool. Then we get Mando, and I'm like, okay, here we go. We already know what's going down here. He's gonna go see Luke and Grogu. Like, we're gonna get that here in this episode, as I thought we would. So he gets down there, and there's R2, and I wasn't expecting that either. So I'm like, okay, here we go. We got R2. Let's go. And then we see these weird looking droids that are building the huts for what is soon to be Luke's island, his school, as it will, for Jedi, and Grogu's gonna end up being the first student. Luke and Grogu had their training scenes, so we actually got to see Luke and see Grogu. Now, I have to say, you guys, when it comes to Luke, the first thing I want to talk about, how much better does Luke look in this show than he did in Mandalorian? Like, the CGI is so much better. They definitely improved upon it from the Mandalorian Season 2. It's very much night and day, and so I was definitely excited when I saw Luke on screen. He references how size matters not, and he talked about Yoda and sort of referenced him a couple times. And then, you guys, he started talking about Grogu and his past and being like, do you want me to make you remember? And I'm like, yes, please make him remember. And in fact, let us see it too. Let me see what happened to Grogu. Where is he? What was he doing? And all of a sudden, they show a freaking flashback scene to Order 66. 3 Jedi were defending him from the 501st troops that were attacking the temple, and eventually all 3 of them got wiped out. And we didn't really see what happened to Grogu after that. I was kind of hoping we'd get a little bit more, but maybe we'll get that in the next episode, or maybe we'll get that in Mandalorian Season 3. But we got a freaking Order 66 flashback scene in this episode, which gives me hope for the Kenobi show for potentially more flashback scenes to Order 66. If we're going to be getting Darth Vader, we're getting Hayden Christensen back, like, surely there's going to be more flashback scenes to Order 66, so I cannot wait. So if this episode wasn't crazy enough, all right, so here's what we got so far, right? We got Cobb Vanth, we got R2-D2, we got Mando, we got Luke, we got Grogu, and then all of a sudden Ahsoka Tano's just standing around, like, what? I'm literally writing stuff down in my notes for this episode because there's just like so much to talk about at this point. And all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, wait, what is Ahsoka doing right there? So obviously, as you guys know, I was very excited to see Ahsoka Tano. A lot of you guys who watch the channel probably know that she is my favorite Star Wars character. So of course, seeing her on screen again really got me excited. And then I started thinking to myself, wait a minute, but Luke and Ahsoka are both on the same planet. They're both in the same spot. Are they going to have interactions with each other? Ahsoka starts talking to Mando about how they're building the first training temple and how Grogu's going to be the first student, which is kind of cool, but then, like, it's also kind of sad when you know about what happens in The Force Awakens. R2 ended up bringing Mando to Ahsoka because they didn't want Mando to bother Luke and Grogu. Which there was like, okay, so surely that means that Ahsoka and Luke have already met. I was kind of hoping, like, to be a little nitpicky, was kind of hoping that we would save their first interaction with each other for, like, you know what I'm saying? But, like, the fact that we get what's coming later, I'm not going to complain about it. I love that Luke put Grogu in a backpack like he did with Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. The Mando ends up leaving the planet because he obviously kind of just takes what Ahsoka says into consideration. And he doesn't want, if she says, like, if Grogu sees you, it's only going to make it harder for him because of the fact that he misses the Mandalorian. So it's like, okay, he kind of respects it. He gives the armor to Ahsoka and is like, you know, make sure he stays safe. And then they take it. So, yeah. Now, okay, here's the thing, though, you guys, that I was a little kind of questioning things about, right? So, Ahsoka, they have a talk about, like, I'm surprised you're okay with Skywalker training him when you weren't. And then, like, she said something about, like, it being his choice or something like that, and she doesn't want to mess with, you know, people's free will, things like that. She doesn't want to have to be that one. But, like, I don't know. I kind of thought, like, the whole reason why she wasn't willing to train someone is because she's seen what Jedi can do, like what the best of them can do. Because especially what Anakin did, right? Like, he turned to the dark side and he was thought to be like the best of the Jedi. But whatever, we can kind of talk about that more later, you guys. Like, the scenes with Luke and Grogu, like, just some of the best stuff that I've seen on screen for the Disney Plus era so far. Like, just Grogu training, and you start to see him, like, actually pick up on things again. But as great as that stuff was, you guys, like, I love the Luke swinging of the lightsaber. I love the training probe. I love, like, the whole idea of, like, him jumping on the rocks and dodging the blaster bolts of the training probe. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, like, I was starting to get a little worried because I'm like, okay, we have Luke here, we have Ahsoka here. Why are they not on screen together yet? And as they're doing the training scene with the probe, all of a sudden I see Ahsoka walk into shot with Luke, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Luke and Ahsoka are on the same screen with each other! It was so good! Ahsoka pretty much tells him, like, hey, you're doing a good job teaching him, and Luke kind of, like, jokes about it, being like, I don't know if it's actually me teaching him or him just remembering things. Because remember, like, the kid was around during the time of the prequels and stuff, so he learned at the Jedi Temple. So it's, in Luke's mind, he sort of feels like he's just making Grogu remember all the things that he learned there. He doesn't necessarily feel like he's progressing. And then he asks Ahsoka, what do you think I should do? And she says, trust your instincts. The other thing that got me too is the reference to Anakin. I'm like, yes, talk more about Anakin. Have Ahsoka and Luke on screen more and talk about Anakin. Please do it. I wanted more. And that's just like the greedy Star Wars fan in me that wanted more from this scene because it's Luke and Ahsoka. But you know what, you guys, for what we got in this scene, I thought it was good enough. You know what? No, hold on. It was, I don't want to say it was perfect, but it was close to perfect for me. Like, I think the only other thing would have been for it to have been a little bit longer and for there to be more talk about Anakin. But maybe that's coming. Like, we've got an Ahsoka show coming up, you guys, in the next couple years. So maybe there will be more of that. I hope that they do see each other again. I know Luke kind of asked that question in the end. I really hope that they do. Or if you're not gonna show more scenes of them, like, in the current day, maybe you show like a little bit of a flashback to like before this scene actually happens, because clearly they've had interactions before this episode. But yeah, I definitely would like to see more from Luke and Ahsoka. I'd even love to see them have an episode where the two of them team up and kick butt against stormtroopers or whatever bad guys Ahsoka happens to be up against at the time. Another thing that I really enjoyed about this scene, apart from just like them talking about Anakin, them talking about the Mandalorian, and Ahsoka giving Luke the armor, is the music that was played in the background. And if you guys didn't recognize it, it was the same music from the Mandalorian season 2 finale when Luke showed up on that Imperial ship and started kicking butt against the Dark Troopers. I thought that was super amazing. I could go on and on talking about that scene, because like I've even gone back and watched it a couple times since watching the episode, just because I enjoyed it that much. And especially before I came recording here today, because I'm like, all right, I want that to be like the freshest thing in my mind. Along with another scene that we're going to talk about later, and y'all already know. Mando returns to Tatooine, and he goes to Jabba's palace. We see Black Chrysanthemum there. We see the kids that he hired early on, the ones that people are saying are looking like Power Rangers and stuff. Full disclosure, I completely forgot that they existed. Because we've only seen them in like 1 or 2 episodes, right? And like, it's been a while, because Boba Fett hasn't been the focal point of the show. To be completely honest, I was surprised that we even had Boba Fett in this episode. So we ended up getting him. We got Fennec. Black Chrysanthemum, like I said, was there as well. So we're going to be assembling this super team here, which I think is pretty cool. But we need more than that. We need an army, right? And that's what they're kind of talking about. And Mando's like, I know where to find soldiers. And so he goes to Cobb Vanth and he's like, hey, like, I need your help. I need the people's help. I fought alongside you guys before. I know what you bring to the table. We need your help. And Cobb Vanth's at first kind of like, I don't know, man, like whatever's going on over there, they can do what they want. Like, as long as they don't mess with my town, I really don't care. But I kind of feel like even as Cobb Vanth was saying those things, I think that he knew deep down that he wanted to help Mando out. I really do, because I think he realized what everybody else was realizing. Like, the Pykes are trying to take over Tatooine. Like, they're quickly establishing their dominance from the things that we've heard. And it's like, if we don't stand together, then the Pykes are going to just end up taking over the entire planet, and the planet will become a part of the Syndicate. So Mando ends up leaving, and Cobb Vanth, because he says he'll think about it, Mando ends up leaving. And immediately as they do so as well, he goes to the bartender, and they walk outside, and they're like, we need to prepare, gather all the townspeople. I want to have a meeting with them. And the dude's like, you can't be serious, right? Like, this is insane. And he's like, just trust me. They're going to want to fight when they hear what I have to say. So I'm very curious to see what he was going to say, but I guess we'll find out later, right? And just when you thought, you guys, this episode couldn't get any crazier. All right, this is an episode that had a Luke and Ahsoka moment. It had Luke and Grogu training. It had R2. It had all these different things going on. But they still had one more surprise left in the tank for us. So all of a sudden we look out into the desert and we see this silhouette of a person walking toward us. And the first shot that they showed, I'm like, oh, who's that? There's a Lone Ranger walking through the desert. Like, what the heck's going on here? And Cobb Vanth looks at, one of the citizens, is like, hey, get all the townspeople inside, have a drink. And the person's like, everything okay? He's like, yeah, everything should be fine. Hopefully, just want to play it safe. So I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then they show the second shot. And I'm like, I feel like this is going to end up being, the way that they're hyping this up right now, I feel like this has got to be a character that we all know. And because I'm still like struggling to see like, okay, this shape out who the person was and everything like that. They cut back to Cobb Vanth. He walks out into the middle of the town street. This is very much like an old Western, like the way that this is set up is old Western vibe. So then we get the third shot and you can clearly see the person's clothes. And most importantly, you can see the hat. And I just went, Oh my gosh. I was going crazy. I was just freaking amazed by what I was seeing right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Cad Bane. And then like as he's walking up to him and I'm thinking about this episode as a whole, I'm like, what is happening in this episode right now? What is this episode? This episode fucking rules. You know what this episode is, you guys? This is the Filoni-verse personified is what this is. Because it had nothing to do with the book of Boba Fett, but it connected to all these different points in Star Wars with all these different characters that have come from stuff that Dave Filoni has worked on. Things from Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, Mandalorian. This is like freaking insane. And this motherfucker, Cad Bane, has had two big surprise returns within the span of what? How long has it been since Bad Batch, right? Like he had a surprise return there and I went crazy for it then. And I went even crazier here because it was freaking live action Cad Bane for the first time ever. And the minute they started doing the standoff too, I'm like, Cobb Vanth, you don't want to do this right now, man. I'm telling you, don't. Everybody needs to stop having standoffs with Cad Bane and doing the thing where, you know, you stand there and you stand still and then you pull out a gun and shoot the other person. This is Cad Bane's specialty, okay? Like, how many times do I have to put that over? All right, every time someone goes into a standoff with Cad Bane, you are not going to win. Unless your name is Boba Fett, which, by the way, they definitely reconned that scene from the Clone Wars now, didn't they? There was a scene in Clone Wars where Cad Bane and Boba Fett had a standoff like that. It was a deleted scene because they never finished the Clone Wars. Thank you, Disney. And they end up doing the standoff. They each pull out their guns. They shoot each other, but you don't see who dies. All you see is the blast mark from Boba Fett. So you don't know like if Cad Bane lived or Cad Bane died. I'm going to be very curious to see if they reference that in the next episode. Like if Cad Bane talks about like, need I remind you the one who gave you the mark on your helmet or something like that. Like, so then we'd know that like maybe that scene does exist, but everyone thought right there that Cad Bane died. But I guess like it was never shown what happened to Cad Bane. So yeah, maybe he didn't necessarily die. But anyway, back to the scene it had. So we've got live action Cad Bane here. And the dude still got his head down. And then all of a sudden we start hearing his voice. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they brought back Corey Burton. Smart move, Dave. Smart move. And he knew his name too. He's like, Cobb Vanth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Vanth, you don't want to do this. And then what didn't necessarily help in Vanth's case is the other deputy that was there as well. The new guy, like, he's like, yeah, the deputy isn't for sale right now. And then the dude, like, Cobb just looks over at him like, dude, are you freaking serious right now? Like, get out of here. Like, let me handle this, all right? And then, honestly, you guys, I think that other dude is kind of what also led to Vanth's downfall. Not that I think that he was ever going to beat Bane anyway, but, you know, we can kind of talk about it. So they start to do the standoff, right? And as they're doing this, I'm just like, okay, like, you need, Cobb, this isn't, you're not going to win. I'm already, like, know in my mind right now that Cobb Vanth is not winning this fight. But then before Vanth pulls out his blaster, he does look over to his deputy, pull out his blaster, or start to pull out his blaster, and that's what ended up leading to his downfall as well, because then immediately as they do so, Bane pulls out his blaster, shoots Cobb Vanth, shoots the deputy multiple times, so he's definitely dead. I don't think Cobb Vanth is dead because I think it got him like in the shoulder, or like, I don't think the shot necessarily went through his heart, so I think it just kind of like grazed him, it kind of took him out of it. So definitely think that Cobb Vanth is still alive. And Bane kind of like shouts to the townspeople being like, as long as the spice moves through this town, no harm will come to anyone. So Cad Bane kind of laying down the law for what's going to happen. So I think this is definitely going to encourage Cobb Vanth and the townspeople to fight back even more because they're going to want to get back at Bane. But, geez, you guys, holy crap, what was this episode? Like, my goodness. And then, guys, at the end, when I saw that Dave Filoni had directed the whole thing, I'm like, of course this was Dave. Of course this was a Dave episode. With all the characters that were in here and everything, I'm like, yeah, of course this was a Dave episode. Oh, but you know what? That wasn't even the final bit of the episode. There were two more parts of the episode. The Pykes ended up blowing up that bar that we see earlier on in the Book of Boba Fett. So all those people are dead now. And then we end up going back to Luke and Grogu, and he ends up showing him the armor that Mando made for him. He's like, this is for you. But he's like, I've also got another gift. And he pulls out a lightsaber, and it's green. And I'm like, oh, he can have a green lightsaber like Yoda. And then Luke's just like, this is Yoda's lightsaber. And I'm like, what? Luke, how'd you get into possession of that? And Luke tells Grogu, you can only choose one. You have to make a choice. You can either choose to take the Mandalorian armor, and I will take you back to be with the Mandalorian, and you can be with him again, but you will end up giving into attachment, losing the way of the Jedi. And then he says, or you can take the lightsaber and I'll train you to become a Jedi. It'll take you years of experience, but you'll end up being better for it. And then he says, but you'll not end up seeing the Mandalorian ever again. And I love this line that Luke used. He said, a short time for you is a lifetime for someone else, which then, like, that line alone right there kind of just makes me to believe that Grogu's going to end up choosing Mando because he'll want to spend the short amount of time that he can with him, to be able to spend that time with him before the Mandalorian ends up dying. The thing that I want to see Grogu do is become like a Jedi and a Mandalorian, right? Like, let him be like a Ta Vizsla type character where it was a Mandalorian Jedi, you know? Like, I would love for something like that in Star Wars, you know what I'm saying? Because we've only heard stuff about Ta Vizsla, but we really haven't seen the guy in action. We never got to see him do the things that he did with the Darksaber and everything like that. Before he chooses, the episode ends, and I'm like, no, don't end there. This episode was absolutely insane, you guys, and I cannot wait for next week's episode because we are finally going to be going to war with the Pykes. And now that, you know, we know that Cad Bane's working for him, I think it makes it all the more interesting. I would love to see a Mandalorian versus Cad Bane fight. I think that'd be sick. But I also want to see a Boba Fett versus Cad Bane fight as well, because especially I feel like after the history that Boba and Cad Bane have, I know that it was never shown on screen, but I think you can definitely reference it. Because if they go by the stuff that was based off of Clone Wars, there was an arc between Boba and Cad Bane where Cad Bane essentially teaches Boba how to be a bounty hunter. I'm very excited to see what next week's episode brings because I feel like there's going to be so much action. I can't wait to see where they take the story from here. Granted, the thing is, like, I really don't care much what's going on with Boba Fett anymore, but I'm really excited to see what they're doing with Mando and Grogu and Luke and Ahsoka and seeing where they take all these people. And now that I think about it as well, if they end up, if Grogu decides to be back with the Mandalorian, maybe we do get to see Luke in action in the next episode because he'll end up taking Grogu back. It's funny because the end of Mando season 2 was Luke coming in to kick butt and then taking Grogu away from Mando. This episode, it could be Luke coming in, kicking butt, and bringing Grogu back to the Mandalorian. So yeah, you guys, I think that pretty much sums up the episode and all my thoughts on it. Like I said, I absolutely loved it. Definitely my favorite episode of anything that they've ever done on Disney Plus so far. This was absolutely incredible. And ironically, it had nothing to do with Boba Fett as well, even though this show is called The Book of Boba Fett. But like I said, you guys, I think we are deep into the Filoni verse now. We're just like, everything connects and intertwines. It's kind of like like the Lucasfilm's version of the MCU. So I would expect to see some of these characters around again in other shows. And I'm very excited to see what happens. Very, very excited to see like where they take the story from here. And I really hope that we get Mando season 3 not long after, because I know there were reports that the show was being delayed or something like that again. So I'm really hoping that we get that soon, you guys, because I'm invested in a lot of these characters and I want to see more for what Dave and company have to offer us regarding them. That's going to wrap up this episode here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share this video around as it really helps support the channel, and I will see you guys next time.